The word that we're going to really concentrate on our second drawing is value. This means a little bit different than it does in other classes. Value in art means how light or how dark something is. How light or how dark something is. Once you have that definition written down, how light or how dark something is, I want us to turn to our notes on page 10. And we'll get started with our Cornell notes for value. And the date today is 9/11. And the topic that we're discussing is how does an artist create value in their art? How does an artist create value in their art? So that's the question that we're going to be discussing throughout this project. There's lots of different ways to create value in artwork. First thing that you need to do is, of course, know what value is. We just discussed that, but it might be good to put it on this portion of the notes as well. Again, how light or how dark. And we'll take and divide that up. So that's the definition, how light or how dark. And the next thing that we're going to do is create a value scale. So value scale. And this is going to teach you lots of different ways to create value and to create the light or the darkness of each of them. So we're going to divide this up into many, many different sections. We need 1, 2, 3, 4, at least 4. If you want to give a bottom line to it, again, you can. Sorry. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines is what I've created. Going horizontally, I'm going to add probably about the same going vertically. 5. Notice I'm making a little bit of a graph, so my lines are going over the top and over the side. And over here, we're going to create the lightest values, bringing it all the way to the darkest values. And we're going to do that with several different techniques. One being hatching, cross hatching, random, and then we're going to talk about blending. I'm going to discuss each of these, and then I'm going to ask you to create them on your own. But first, I'd really invite you to put your pencils down and just watch to begin with, and then you're going to do it on your own. So when we're talking about hatching, we're talking about parallel lines to one another. Don't do this right now, you're just watching. I always tend to go in a diagonal movement, but that's not necessarily the right way. It's just a way. Now, I started out with my parallel lines being somewhat apart. As I want to increase the value, I'm going to place those lines closer to one another until I increase them so much that I get a very, very dark value. We're only trying 4 or 5 different sections. Notice I'm going over this and over this and over this, and this value is going to appear much darker than this first value. That's the same concept for all of these. So cross-hatching then would be your parallel lines or hatch marks, and then crossing them. As we increase the value, it's going to get much darker, but we'll cross more times. So I start out with my same light value, and instead of just crossing it twice, I can cross it multiple times. I can get these lines closer to one another, and I'll end up with a very dark value. Random lines. This is my personal favorite. When you create random lines, your pencil or pen, in this case, is lost. It's just kind of walking around, finding its way through, and creating value at the same time. If I create these random lines far apart, they become a very light value. But if I make tighter turns and make my lines closer to one another, we end up with some very dark value. This is kind of a fun way, and well, it's a value that works for some brains, not for everybody's. But I'd like you to give it a try in your notes. The last one you need a pencil for, and that's blending. We're going to blend in several different ways, but basically you're adding your value down. Now the lighter I work with my pencil, so the less pressure I put down, the lighter the value, and the harder I add the pencil down, or the harder pressure that I have, the darker the value. Now, this is just the beginning. You're also going to use something called a blending stump, which of course I don't have right here. Hold on one second. Blending stumps come in many different sizes. Some are very, very thin, some are larger. And we're going to be blending this with the blending stump. Now you can blend with your finger, but the problem with that is that you have oils on your fingers, and it can sometimes disturb the graphite. So we use a blending stump or some kind of paper. Some people use a paper towel just wrapped around their finger. But when you use this, it blends it so that you don't see the lines as much, or maybe even at all. The cool thing about blending stumps is that once you get some graphite on your blending stump, you can just use that for your value as well. That's an extremely light value. Now what students sometimes want to do with this is it's basically paper wrapped together. Here, let me focus that a little bit better. No, not going to happen. All right. So there's paper around the bottom that creates this. It's just rolled up, and students will want to pull that apart sometimes. Please don't do that. It just ruins them, and then I can't use them again. So start with your darkest values on this one, blending it together, moving your way to your medium tones to your very light. Oops, sorry, you didn't see that at all. Blending. I want you to give these 4 techniques